Hello, in this video today I will be ranking all the MCU franchises. Now what I mean when I say franchise is either two movies or three movies or a movie and a TV show that are, or even two TV shows about the same character. So for example, you have, right now anyway, the two Guardians of the Galaxy films, you have the three Captain America standalone films, the four Avengers films. You also have, for example, Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel. They are about different characters, yes, but they're both about a Marvel, so I'm still going to count that. With that disclaimer out of the way, coming in last place at number 10, we have we have four. I'm putting the four franchise in last place because there's been four films that have been released. Four for The Dark World, for Ragnarok, for Love and Thunder, and I found them to be really inconsistent quality-wise. I think the first film is good but not great. You can definitely feel that this film was made back in the early days when the MCU was still trying to find its footing. It has great visuals when it comes to Asgard, some great performances. Kenneth Branagh brings a great sense of Shakespearean grandeur to the scenes on Asgard, but there's a really big tonal shift when you get to Earth. The locations we see on Earth don't look very visually interesting. I think Thor's redemptive arc is rather rushed. So overall, I don't think Thor is a great film, though I think it's a good film. And then you have For the Dark World, which I think is one of the most mediocre and forgettable films in the entire MCU. It's one of the MCU films that I don't have any desire to rewatch. I haven't actually watched it in a long time. It's not that I think For the Dark World is a bad film. It is, the shots are all in focus. There are good things about this film, but it's just very middle of the road, bland, generic, and forgettable. And then I like Thor Ragnarok. I do think too many times a scene that has dramatic / emotional weight is undercut by forced and unnecessary humor. But overall, I still like that film and think, as many other people do, that it's a major improvement over For the Dark World. I think in that case, Taika Waititi overall took the Thor franchise in a good direction. But then you get to Thor Love and Thunder, which I was really disappointed by, because I thought it got so goofy and so over the top that it became self-parody. And the film touched on really interesting ideas, but then it didn't explore them further than that. Then coming in at number 9, we have the Doctor Strange franchise. Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness. The main reason why I'm putting the Doctor Strange franchise at number 9 is because I'm not really a big fan of either one of the Doctor Strange films. When it comes to the first film, the visual effects and action scenes really stand out. They are very creative. I like how the third act subverts the traditional MCU third act. I think a lot of the performances are really good. There is some good humor in the film, but overall, for me, Doctor Strange still comes off as a generic MCU film, despite the creative aspects of this film. That's because the plot and villain are very generic. I think there's some forced humor in this film. The character of Christine Palmer is rather generic and forgettable. Therefore, overall, I don't think Doctor Strange is a great film. I think it's good, but more of a middle of the road MCU film, not one of my favorites. And then I'm not a big fan of Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness, because I felt overall the film played it rather safe, and I'm also baffled that Vision as well as the Mordor from the first Doctor Strange film are completely excluded from this film. And then coming in at number 8, we have, let's see here, number 8 will be the Iron Man trilogy. Now, I think that the first Iron Man film is great. It is a great kickoff to the MCU overall. This is the film that kicked off both the MCU as a whole as well as the Infinity Saga. It's a film that has aged really well, as I think it's actually become better over time because Endgame does such a great job of paying this film off. But the second Iron Man film is the one MCU film that I think is outright bad. Then when it comes to Iron Man 3, I actually like this film. I have always thought that it's underrated and gets more criticism than it deserves, but I still have my issues with it, and looking at the franchise as a whole, looking at the story as a whole, it certainly comes off as the black sheep. Well, I wouldn't say black sheep, but it feels like an oddity in the MCU, because it feels like Iron Man 3 was meant to close out Tony Stark's story, but that didn't end up happening. Also, at the end of this film, Tony destroys all his suits, but that ends up not mattering whatsoever, because Tony's just back to being Iron Man right away in Age of Ultron, and therefore, when you go back and watch this film, it certainly feels strange in that regard. So I've found the standalone Iron Man films to be inconsistent, and that's why I've placed Iron Man films low, which makes me sad because I'm a really big fan of the first Iron Man film. But coming in at number 7, we have the Marvels franchise, Captain Marvel as well as Miss Marvel. Now, I'm not a big fan of Captain Marvel. It's a film that overall feels more bland and forgettable to me. There's things that I enjoy about the film, but overall it's an MCU film that I've seen once and don't have much desire to rewatch. Plus, it honestly feels to me like a Phase 1 film, even though it's actually a Phase 3 film that came out after Infinity War, but before Endgame. And then I actually enjoyed the Miss Marvel show. I thought that the main character, Kamala Khan, was really good, really likable, and I thought what we learned about her family as well as what we learned about time travel was interesting. I think that the finale is a bit rushed, but overall I am a fan of the Miss Marvel show. But because I'm not a big fan of Captain Marvel, that's why I've placed the Marvels franchise at number 7. And then coming in at number 6, we have let's see, should I put the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, or the Black Panther franchise, or the Ant-Man franchise? I'm gonna put Guardians of the Galaxy at number 6. You have Guardians of the Galaxy as well as Guardians Volume 2. I like the first Guardians of the Galaxy filming. It's a good movie. I do think that the plot and villain are rather generic, like with Doctor Strange. But the film did a great job of introducing us to the Guardians of the Galaxy. The visual effects and soundtrack are great. There's some really, really funny moments. And then when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I like this film. I don't think it's great. I certainly have my issues with it, like the rather inconsistent tone, the forced and at times more mean-spirited humor. But overall, I did like Guardians Volume 2, but because I have issues with it, I placed the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise at number 6. And then going in at number 5, we have the Ant-Man franchise. Now, I'm a fan of Ant-Man as well as Ant-Man and the Wasp. They're certainly more lightweight than other MCU films, as they're intentionally small-scale, low-stakes, lighthearted, non-ambitious films that are not aiming particularly high, but I think they're a lot of fun. I think that pretty much all the performances are really good. I think Paul Rudd, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas, and Evangeline Lilly all do really good. Michael Pena is really funny in the first 2 films. I like that Ant-Man and the Wasp is different from other MCU films, as it's a MacGuffin story about these different groups that are all trying to get this one item. But while I overall enjoyed Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, I definitely have my issues with it. I don't like it as much as Ant-Man or Ant-Man the Wasp. While I really enjoyed actually seeing Kane the Conqueror for the first time, the big bad of the multiverse saga, while I like that Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania gave the MCU as a whole a target to move to, it made it clear to the audience where the story overall is heading, therefore we can actually get excited for that. I really do not like that the filmmakers thought it was a good idea to have a dead serious, very menacing and intimidating villain like Kane, alongside a rather goofy and over-the-top villain like MODOK. Kane and MODOK do not mesh well with each other at all. I also really felt the absence of not only Michael Pena's character Luis and his buddies, but also Maggie and Paxton. Maggie being Scott's ex-wife, and Paxton being the guy Maggie is married. I thought those 2 characters were really good in the first 2 Ant-Man films. In particular, I like how the relationship between Scott and Paxton developed over the course of the 2 Ant-Man films. Also, with the 3rd film, I thought it stretched too much credibility, that after all the time that passed since Ant-Man the Wasp, Michelle Pfeiffer's character, what's her name? Hank and what? Well, the point is that it stretches too much credibility that her character, for some reason, decided to just never mention anything at all about the quantum realm to Hank or Hope after she came back to the surface world at the end of Ant-Man the Wasp. On top of that, it's really ridiculous that she had no problem at all with Scott going down to the quantum realm during the post-credit scene of Ant-Man the Wasp, despite the fact that this film establishes that she knows about Kane and how much of a threat he poses. So now when you look back at the post-credit scene of Ant-Man the Wasp, you're like, what? Why is it that she would act so casual about Scott going down the quantum realm when she knows that Kane is down there and poses a huge threat and is very, very dangerous? On top of that, the whole plot of Avengers Endgame happened... Well, the point is, Avengers Endgame heavily features the quantum realm. The time heist was about the Avengers using the quantum realm to get the Infinity Stones. Therefore, when you watch this film, it's like, what? Did the writers just forget about Avengers Endgame? Did they forget to rewatch that film? Therefore realize, oh, the heroes actually used the quantum realm to get the Infinity Stones. Therefore, you get a feeling that Kane being down there and her about knowing about Kane was not planned from the beginning, because it doesn't match with the post-credit scene of Ant-Man the Wasp or Avengers Endgame. And so if before Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, I would have had the Ant-Man films higher up on this list, but because of the problems I have with Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, this franchise only comes in at number 5. Oh, now I remember Janet. Why did I blank there? Silly me. Okay, so so Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania tells us that for some reason Janet was so negligent that she failed to mention anything about her time in the quantum realm to Hank or Hope after she came back, as we saw in Ant-Man the Wasp. Plus, it was completely fine with Scott going down the quantum realm, despite Janet knowing that this very powerful villain named Kane was down there. But moving on now to number 4, we have the Black Panther films. I'm a big fan of the first Black Panther film. Yeah, I agree, the visual effects and action scenes could have been better, but I'm a big fan of T'Challa as well as basically all the other characters. The music is really good. It's awesome seeing Wakanda for the first time. Killmonger is one of the best villains in the whole franchise. And then I like Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I didn't think it was as good as the first film. It's not one of my favorite films in the whole franchise. I certainly have my issues with it, like Wakanda not looking as visually impressive as it did in the first film. Namor somehow being able to slip into Wakanda multiple times, suggesting that somehow their security is not that good. The Wakandans deciding that the best course of action is to go out into the ocean to fight against Namor's people, despite the fact that that is where Namor's people are at their strongest. But I did like the film, thought it was a good tribute to Chadwick Boseman, and a good way to wrap up Phase 4. But now coming in at number 3, we have... No, actually, this would be number 4, because we have the Spider-Man trilogy, the Captain America trilogy, the Iron Man trilogy, and the 4 Avengers films. So coming in number 4, I covered the Iron Man films already. So you have the Captain America films, the 4 Avengers films, and the 3 Spider-Man films. So yeah, coming in number 3, we have the 3 Spider-Man films. I'm a big fan of Spider-Man Homecoming. I think it's one of the most entertaining and rewatchable MCU films. I think Vulture is a great villain. Basically, all the performances are really good. And I think Spider-Man Far From Home is an entertaining film, but one that just stretches too much credibility. I've talked about this before in other videos, but one quick thing I'll add is that we literally see in the film itself that Peter almost kills one of his classmates by accident. Yeah, Peter didn't intend for that to happen, but still, that clearly shows us that Peter did not have the maturity or judgment required to handle the Edith glasses in a responsible manner. That just makes it even more ridiculous that Tony, for some reason, thought it was a good idea to just leave the Edith glasses to Peter with no instructions. Then, I'm a big fan of Spider-Man No Way Home. Unfortunately, the setup for the film is quite lazy, but the payoff is just amazing. The way the film ends is very powerful, and I love the fact that Spider-Man No Way Home made it clear that this trilogy of films was telling Spider-Man's origin story. It just did so in a subversive way. And the way that Spider-Man No Way Home wrapped up these 3 films did, I think, make them all better in hindsight. But coming in at number 2, we have the Captain America trilogy. I think that the first Captain America film is good, though not great. I certainly have my issues with it, like the way it montages through World War II, the Howling Commandos being very forgettable, Red Skull mostly just delivering exposition. Overall, I don't think Red Skull is a great villain in this film, but it does a great job of telling the origin story of Captain America. Steve Rogers is the paragon of the MCU as far as I'm concerned. He is that pillar of virtue, that shining light in regards to morality. He shows how America should be, but never actually is. Then I thought Captain America the Winter Soldier is a great film. It's one of my favorite films in the whole franchise. The main theme as well as the Winter Soldier theme are great. The action scenes are great. Hydra twist has really changed the direction of the MCU in general. The way the film shows us Steve trying to adjust to a world that is not familiar to him is great. And the way the film develops the relationship between Natasha and Steve is great. And then I thought Captain America Civil War is a great film. So the reason why the Captain America trilogy is at number 2 is that in this trilogy you have 2 great films and 1 good film. Then coming in number 1 is the 4 Avengers films. Now this might be a little bit confusing to some people because I'm not a big fan of Avengers Age of Ultron. I find it to be mediocre. Then I like the first Avengers film, but I certainly have my issues with it. However, because of Infinity War and Endgame, I just had to place these 4 films at number 1. Because what Infinity War and Endgame pulled off is special as far as I'm concerned. And honestly, I don't know if we're ever going to see anything in the MCU that can reach that reaches the heights of Infinity War and Endgame. What everyone that was behind these films pulled off is just amazing. But that will wrap things up for this video. Bye, everyone.